Oh, I didn't read it, but I met with her. Yeah. Okay, after 7 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. Call Dash two. Sam, roll call please.
Martin.
Here.
Burkhart.
Here.
Ready.
Here.
Cope.
Here.
Evans.
I want to welcome everyone that is in the audience. Item on the agenda, that's that item come up. That time. Item not on there, but agenda are not. Next item on the agenda. Why don't we have very much. Well done. Next item on the agenda is
Item 3. Just accidentally put on work session.
any other changes, council? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the agenda? So move.
Second.
Motion, second discussion. Sam, roll.
Burkhart.
Yes.
Cope.
Yes.
Ready.
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes. Motion passed. Not a public. Now, Supervisor Bob Brunel. Here. Going earlier. He's going to find her. Okay. Well, let's get, work to us. That is the only other item that we have listed on our public. But in the audience that would like to address the council on an item that is not on. On. We have 2 public hearings this evening. First is to conduct a public hearing for their approval of the following items related to public water main, public utility on property located in the northeast corner of Northwest 62nd Avenue, Silver Birch Street. Resolution number 23-276. We received a public water main Silver Birch Park Plat 3 and resolution number 23-277. Public utility and Silver Birch Park Plat 3. Public 707.
Good evening. I will keep my comments brief on this. Mike and Michelle Christensen have purchased these 3 properties and they have tied them together. This is the northeast corner of Northwest 62nd Avenue, Silver Birch Street. You've seen this site on several occasions in the past few months for rezoning. They have tied those 3 together into a single buildable parcel, and based on where they want to put the house, as seen here on the overhead, it does slightly encroach into some public easements that were established at the time when this was to be developed as 3 separate parcels. But now that they're all combined into one legal parcel, they're no longer needed because it's all serving the same person. So they've requested that they be vacated so that they can go ahead with construction of their home. And staff is recommending approval.
Council have any questions for Clayton? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the council? Seeing none, close the public hearing at 7:08. We have a motion to approve resolution number 23-276. Motion, second discussion. Sam, vote please.
Cope.
Yes.
Ready.
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Burkhart.
Yes.
Motion passed. We have a motion to approve resolution number 23-277.
So moved.
We have a motion, a second discussion. Sam, vote please.
Ready.
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Burkhart,
Yes.
Coe.
Yes.
Motion passed. Item 4B, conduct a public hearing on the matter of adoption of plan specifications, form of contract, and estimate of cost for the Orchard Meadows lift station 2023 improvements project. Consider resolution number 23-284, adopting plan specifications, form of contract, and estimate of cost. Construction bids. 20-285, rejecting bid for Orchard Meadows 1 lift station 2020. Open this public hearing at 7:09.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. On October 10th, the city received bids for the Orchard Meadows One Lift Station Improvement Project, which is to replace the generator at the lift station. We received one bid for the project. The engineer's opinion of probable cost was $226,700, and the low bid received was $358,300, roughly 60% over the engineer's estimate. Engineer did evaluate the bids along with feedback from the contractor. We did receive the bid. We did have some cost materials or some bid items that did come over. Demolition, electrical work. They had rented all of their equipment to perform the project. So those costs did come in high, and then a little bit of misunderstanding in what the project entailed as well. So also reached out. There was another contractor that did take plans, just didn't bid on the project. So we reached out to them to find out how we could take a look at that and evaluate those plans, those designs, and then see if we got some cost savings, and we'll come back and rebid that project later. So staff does recommend to reject the bids for this project. Happy to answer any questions.
Else have questions? This is a public hearing on this item. Does anyone in the audience have comments? Hearing at 7:11. Two resolutions before us. The first is to consider resolution number 20-284. Motion.
First resolution is to approve plan specs, form of contract, and estimate of cost, so that the project could be in its current form. So, but it could also design the project.
Second one is drafted.
The second one
I just
is
want to make sure that whoever makes the vote doesn't have to word in any way that
Nope.
impact it and indicate that we're rejecting the amendment.
We have a motion on resolution for 22-284.
So moved.
Motion second, discussion.
Mayor, I just need a little more clarification. I apologize. If the plan is to go and revise or potentially revise these plans, why would we approve this current plan?
We've got to go back and have the engineer take a look to see if there are cost savings. We just did this last week. So go back and look and see if there are cost savings. We also need to hear from the other contractor to see if there are, because of material costs and labor costs that have gone up. So we need to adopt those plans in case there are no cost savings in that plan.
Okay. Is it typical for us to adopt those plans apart from when we usually accept bids? In other words, is there any harm in us waiting to, if we decide to rebid this, to actually accept the plans and accept the bid? I've done that in the past, right?
For approval of the plan specs, form of contract, and estimate of cost. But if you approve them tonight, it just they're approved now, regardless of what. Typically, the night that you hold the public hearing is when contract. That's the process.
And if we do have to redesign, we would have to go through that same
There was
process.
a public hearing.
Okay. Thank you.
So we have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Sample, please.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Burkhart,
Yes.
Coe,
Yes.
Ready.
Yes.
Motion passed. Have a motion to approve resolution number 20-285. vote please.
Warner,
Yes.
Burkhart,
Yes.
Coe,
Yes.
Ready,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent?
So-
Motion second, discussion? Sam, vote please.
Burkhart,
Yes.
Coe,
Yes.
Ready, Evans.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes. Motion passed. Non-consent agenda. Item 7A, consider approval of resolution number 23-275, approving site plan and preliminary plat for 5560 and 5580 Merle Hay Road. using case 20-7. Wait,
One moment to get situated. Okay, got all the tabs open. All right. Pinter Partners LLC has submitted a development plan which would support a new professional office building on the southwest corner of Pioneer Parkway, Merle Hay Road. The intended tenant of that would be Bank, Iowa. And then just south of that would be a standalone restaurant facility with drive-through facilities. The intended tenant is Starbucks. So before you tonight is the site plan and preliminary plat for this development. The final plat would come back at a later date once we have the necessary legal documents. I am going to also address during my comments here the next agenda item, which is the construction plans for Pioneer Parkway. Just seems to make sense that we discuss it all in one package. I'll make sure for the record to reference back to this and that item comes up. So kind of a brief synopsis on the history of this site. It was donated to the Men's Garden Clubs of America in 1967 from what was then Pioneer Hybrid. And they constructed a headquarters facility on that site in 1968. In 1977, that site was transferred via deed to the Gardeners of America. They rebranded themselves by that point. And that did include a clause that if the property ceased to be used as a garden club for a local and national organization, it must revert back to Pioneer, now Corteva. So moving forward to 2020, the club relocated their headquarters to Ohio, and per that 1977 clause, the property automatically reverted back to Corteva. So that's how we got to the property back to Corteva. And then finally, in March of this year, Pinta Partners LLC, they purchased the property from Corteva. Moving on now, this property is in the Thrive 2040 comprehensive plan with a commercial future land use designation. To further refine this, it is within our Merle Hay Road corridor focus area. And we do have a key principle within that text that references that active commercial uses are the preferred land use along Merle Hay Road, with experience-based retail and commercial services high priority as well. Staff is recommending that the proposed uses are consistent with the Thrive 2040 comprehensive plan. This property is zoned C2 community commercial zoning district, and as proposed, all building setbacks and lot regulations are being met. These properties will be serviced by public sanitary sewer, water, and storm sewer along Pioneer Parkway. And there would be some private extension internal to the site to service both buildings. The one that I want to call out, the storm sewer for this site is proposed to exit out the northwest from their underground detention basins, and that would allow it to extend down the east of Pioneer Parkway to connect to storm sewer at Greenville Road. And this alignment, it is a bit atypical for infrastructure in the city. Typically try to keep infrastructure out from the median, from pavement. However, in this particular case, with mature trees on the site along Pioneer Parkway, this was the route that afforded the best ability to preserve trees on the Men's Garden Club site by reducing the need to import fill on the site. As I mentioned, the stormwater would be managed with underground detention cells. Those are generally along the western edge of the property, under the drive aisles and parking spaces that would address water quality and water quantity volumes for both sites. Access to the site, there are two proposed. First is on the northwest corner of the site, which would connect to Pioneer Parkway. This would be a full access, a new full access that would align with the approved location for a quick start to connect to Pioneer Parkway on the north side of Pioneer Parkway. And this would allow for free movement in all directions here. The other access is a shared access here on the southeast quadrant of the site, shared with the Southern Shopping Center, Crown Point Center. And that would have full access to Merlehaven Road as well. With Quick Star and knowing the development that was coming here, there was a traffic study completed by the city engineer Vogt, and it did look at both the Quick Star site and the Penta Park site and all access points, and it's found that it would all criteria of operation here in the city, with level of service level D or better, which is our target is level D. Even after the ones below it, don't want those. I did include a condition on resolution. Well, that the Starbucks building permit would be conditioned on easements being sorted out between this site and the southern property owner. And research no existing easements are in place, even though this is an existing shared access. Can't really tell why it never got recorded done, but it doesn't exist. The site plan for the south to the site does include in the approval resolution a condition requiring them to grant the easement for the site. So for some reason, it just didn't get done. And I'll just leave it at that. But that would just need to be sorted out prior to issuance of the building permit.
But just to clarify, Clay, so what you're saying, existing property to the south, when their site plan was approved by the city council, there was a condition as part of that site plan requiring them to grant the property north.
It didn't explicitly say to the property to the north. It said it needs to provide for the common access, including the Merlehaven Road, which at that time would have included that shared access on the north as well. So one could presume, and I'm making a little bit of a presumption there, perhaps. But yes, I would presume that condition on that resolution. It's pretty clear. Regarding parking for both sites, they are both meeting minimum parking requirements, independent of one another. The bank site would actually be exceeding their minimum by 2 parking spaces. The Starbucks site exceeding theirs by 15, but still meeting all minimum requirements. Additionally, bike parking is a new requirement in our zoning code as of May 1st of this year, and they are actually exceeding our requirements. We require capacity for 2 bicycles at both buildings. They're doubling that 4. So that certainly is a promising aspect to take advantage of the trail along Pioneer Parkway, some of the other active uses we have in the area. Pedestrian access to the site, one off of Pioneer Parkway, one off of Merlehaven Road with inside interior connections, allowing for safe, efficient pedestrian movements as well that's separated from vehicle traffic. Before I get to the tree preservation item, I do want to touch on the architecture because I don't want that to get lost. We do require that all buildings in our C2 zoning district be at least 50% Class A materials, which is a high quality material, no more than 50% Class B, which is a standard quality material, and no more than 15% Class C, which is a trim grade material. This proposal is exceeding our requirements with 100% of each facade being a Class A high quality material. Now I want to move over to tree preservation and landscaping.
Let
Which
let me just ask,
yes,
the material, that apply to both buildings?
yeah, both buildings are 100% Class A material. Yes.
Drive to restaurant, Starbucks, is that only drive through or that's the?
There's the drive-through. I pointed out, one of the comments I didn't mention is queuing capacity. Queuing would be along this western drive aisle to the north. They are showing capacity for 6 vehicles, which is our minimum. And in fact, there's actually additional capacity there as well. They're just not required to show it. And then between the ordering station and the drive-through window, they have capacity for 6 vehicles as well. So 12 total, 6 waiting for the order and 6 waiting to order. But yeah, so that drive-through is designed to go south with an exit here on this eastern drive aisle. Interior sit, yes, yeah, interior sit-in, and they do show an out exterior patio as well. And maybe before I hop on to tree preservation, I want to come back to the southeast entrance. I did ask both to take another look at that since Planning and Zoning Commission and to see if it was indeed city code requirements, and they cannot find any code deficiencies or violations in relation to the design of that southeast entrance. It's city standards, but there's certainly been a healthy debate about configuration of that entrance, but at least as of this right now, staff is not aware of anything that would hinder that the proposal as shown. Before entry, any other questions on the general?
Clayton, is this an appropriate time to ask more questions about that traffic study and how it relates to that south entrance, or would you like me to wait on that?
How do you want to handle it? Do you want to address those now? Or do you want to finish up our-
Or we're going to come back? More discussion about the drive, or
Certainly can.
this might be the right time to ask.
I'll do that since we kind of have two different.
So as I reviewed that traffic study that was posted as part of our packet, the intersection that I'm referring to is on page 4. It's intersection that one that shared, the one that has the contingency put in place that we go ahead and have that easement place there. Can you help me understand what I'm now going to scroll down to page 7, where we talk about those traffic volumes at can you help make sense of those quantities of traffic?
Here for me if I just walk up to the screen if you don't mind.
That's just fine.
So looking here at B, this is oriented north this way. This is traffic exiting the Starbucks shopping center site. This is traffic going. Yeah, I'm misoriented. I am misoriented. This is north. So southbound Burlhay, 13 coming in AM, 11 in the PM, exiting 12 in the AM, turning left to go northbound, 8 in the AM, PM to go northbound, with the majority of it showing that it would go turn right southbound traffic. Coming north, you'd have 60 in the AM taking a left to go into the site from if you're driving northbound on Merle Hay, 35 in the evening. Does that help?
It does. What I guess I have questions about then, if we continue on down, those numbers seem very low to me, but at the same point, I'm not a traffic engineer. And if it was modeled with regard to a coffee shop with drive-through, then I have to trust that those numbers out of there, especially going southbound, I would have projected that they would be greater. But as we move our way down to page 9, on page 9, then get to identify levels of service. And what I need some help and clarification on is at that intersection, I see a northbound, I see a southbound, I see a westbound. Is that if I'm in position or on Merle Hay itself?
The westbound?
Yes.
That would be that I'm driving north on Merle Hay, taking a left into this site.
And if I anticipate that I would anticipate a 22-second delay on average or a 29-second delay in the PM in order to take a left to cross Merle Hay at that time or at that location.
That's correct. That would be correct. That's the delay in seconds.
And categorize that as a two-way controlled stop. Then there's a stop at that south exit.
These are driveway exits, so they're not codified stops.
Okay, I'm looking at the control type column that's listed on that table. So I'm just trying to figure out what we would see as far as traffic controls.
If you're exiting the site, you would have to build or stop to traffic on Merle Hay Road, who has the right of way.
Okay,
But it may not have a actual stop sign placed. It should function as any other driveway where you built to the right of way.
thank you.
If I can add to that, the westbound is referring to the westbound lane of that intersection. So as you were exiting from the parking lot, so you would have a 22-second delay out.
That was wrong on that.
And it would be regardless of north or south, that we anticipate that 22-second from that vantage.
Right.
Okay. And then the follow-up question to that is, do we have any imagery or design as to actually how traffic would queue at that to encompass all of the different directions that someone could go from that intersection? In other words, one of my hesitations is as traffic leaves that parcel to try to use that intersection, is it going to potentially queue and block those that want to either enter that parcel or even enter the strip center of which that entrance is more aligned? Do we have any kind of alignment or any kind of graphic that actually indicates with representation of where the traffic queuing will be for those that want to enter and exit? Okay. So we don't know how they came up with those numbers necessarily then based on that queue. Did they presume queue? I'm assuming at 22 seconds there was some sort of queue. I apologize for springing this on you. I did actually ask these questions earlier today, and I hope that the message got to you that I would be asking these. So I'm sorry if right now we're not prepared to answer those.
You're right.
Going back to the numbers, with 34 cars turning south out of that, or 12 going north, 22-second delay. We don't have any imagery of how they would stack. I'm not sure we can answer that question.
It highlighted the paragraph that's how they assigned the distribution of trips on page 6. I was trying to find. And I saw it in there earlier. Yes, your message got delivered. Any other general site questions before I move on? And finish up the site presentation on tree.
I guess I just as a follow-up to Councilperson Burkhart's question, looking at traffic study. Where it's a Burley Road and Penta access. I'm trying to understand westbound. Westbound headed west. So are you on Burley and turning west site?
No, it's actually referring to the westbound leg of that intersection
Of
of Burl Hay and the entrance.
So I'm gonna point up here. And Matt corrected me on this. The westbound leg is traffic exiting the site here. Northbound would be the traffic going northbound on Merle Hay. Southbound would be southbound. on
But
Merle
how
Hay.
could traffic exiting westbound?
It's not saying the travel direction, it's saying that's the westbound section of the intersection.
It's the west leg of the intersection, westbound.
Okay, west leg is
West leg.
I apologize, I think I keep getting my directions.
So that
turned
could
around.
be either somebody turning to the north from that or turning to the south. 'Cause I mean, I could certainly see if you're trying to turn to the north, you're gonna have to wait. You're cutting across 2 or 3 lanes of traffic there, so that's gonna be anticipate that would be a delay in it. And in fact, probably even avoid probably that section, right? You'd probably say, if I'm trying to go northbound, I'm gonna find some other way.
Yeah, I would assume you would cycle back through the lot, back out to Pioneer Parkway
Right.
to the light.
But and so and just but the likelihood that you'd have to wait a significant amount of time if you're in the westbound lane and turning south is probably less, just depending on how you time it up, right? If the traffic at Merle Hay is stopped at Merle Hay and Pioneer Parkway where there's a controlled stoplight, then you should be able to hop right out there. But
Yeah, it'd be less time versus trying to cross the entire Burl Hay. Have some right turn coming off the Pioneer Parkway, so.
And this traffic study does seem to do a good job of reflecting the traffic patterns, particularly the AM, you'd have an easier time exiting that site, which logically makes sense to me because people tend to be coming north on Pioneer or on Merle Hay Road to work in Johnston in the morning. Then in the evening, I would think, yeah, it's going to be more difficult to get out of the site because you've got more traffic heading southbound.
so I just want to click when you say, when you make that conclusion of AM is easier than PM. What in the traffic study to that conclusion? I always find these traffic studies sort of reminds me of studying the LSAT. So what
I'm inferring from the data, it doesn't explicitly state this, I'm just inferring from table 7 on page 9, where it's talking about the level of delay in AM and PM in seconds. Just logically makes sense to me that you have an easier time exiting the site, especially if you're going.
the fact that they label C, so so like, for instance, I'm looking at page 10. And so it says for that westbound, it's at the level of service of C in AM and then PM. That's where you draw the conclusion. Okay, I just read. Okay.
Other questions, Council?
Right, I'm going to move on to tree preservation and landscaping at this point. Within the city of Johnston, all trees 6-inch caliper diameter or larger are automatically designated protected trees. On this particular site, there are 48 trees classified as protected, meeting that criteria. Of those 48, 13 of those are automatically eligible for removal, just based on the species of trees being on our prohibited or temporarily restricted tree list. And then the remaining 35 will be subject to city council approval or satisfying one of the other criteria available for removal. And I did include a complete list of those criteria in your staff report. Page 7. Find those criteria. So for this particular development, they're proposing to utilize condition number 8, which would be those 13 trees. In fact, they're only proposing to take out 12 of those 13. They are looking to retain at least the black maple, and the remainder would fall under that condition number 7. Trees to be removed, cut, disturbed that are included in noted on site plans approved by the city council. So at the city council's discretion. Of those 35 remaining trees on the site that I mentioned, they are proposing to remove 20 of those, and they did provide an exhibit which was in your packet Friday, I believe it was, and they provided the notes on the side corresponding to the numbers in the image on their basis for why they need to remove those trees. So that's their justification provided to you. Of the remaining trees that are to be preserved on the site, we are looking to relocate 4 of them to a new location on the site. The resolution does include a condition for identifying an appropriate root ball size based on an expert, like a landscape engineer or someone with a degree in forestry, horticulture, or similar type of profession, so that we make sure we get sufficient capacity to maintain the health of the tree, as well as how are we going to have these trees protected during the construction process. So that is currently a condition on the resolution. And then trees that are proposed to be retained in their original location, city ordinance does require at least 60% of the critical root zone to be protected. For critical root zone, 1-inch caliper diameter equals 1 foot radius of root zone. So that's kind of a simple calculation of how we determine it. Just pi r squared to the area of the circle, 60% of that. And fencing and improvements can come within 10 feet of proposed improvements. So they are showing those. And of the trees to be preserved, all but the 24-inch ginkgo would exceed the 60% requirement. The ginkgo is at a 30% preservation of the root zone. As drafted, the resolution does include a condition that the ginkgo zone increase to a minimum of 60% to ensure preservation of it. All others to be preserved, like I said, or exceed the requirement. There are 3 trees on the site that they're retaining 100% of the root zone. That's the 12-inch pin oak, 12-inch black maple, and 12-inch red oak, and those are eligible for credit towards their minimum required landscaping on the site.
But could you just quickly highlight those 3 trees? Are they planted?
Like better.
This is fine.
The 12-inch black maple is just to the northwest of the Starbucks. 12-inch pin oak is just to the northwest of the bank. And the 20-inch red oak is here on the corner of Memorial Hay Road, Pioneer Parkway. Those are the 3 that they need the 100% root protection zone on. then maybe just for everyone's benefit, since I have this map open, the color code on here, green represents trees that can be removed based on species. That's the prohibited or temporarily restricted. Yellow trees are subject to city council approval. The red X corresponds with the proposed removed trees as shown on the site plan. So that's kind of how that was derived. So moving on, there's probably plenty to discuss on tree preservation. I want to get in on new landscaping requirements. We have several on this site. Starting off, each of the properties has 25% of their site is open space. Bank site would be retaining 47% as open space. The Starbucks at 34%, so they're exceeding the minimum requirements of open space. There is a 20-foot landscape buffer required along this western property boundary here, and that is adjoining child served property. That's required because it's a C1 zoning to a C2 zoning. And they are their buffer landscaping requirements within that buffer. Open space landscaping, the bank site's required to have 11 trees. The Starbucks is required to have 10. The bank site is providing 6 new trees plus utilizing credit from that pin oak and the red oak to make up the remaining 5. And then Starbucks site, they're planting 12 new trees, plus also they could receive credit. So they're exceeding the minimum requirements on both sites in terms of trees, plus preservation. The shrubs, they're exceeding the minimum requirements as well. We also have adopted street tree landscaping requirements along Merlehay Road and Pioneer Parkway, the tree required every 50 feet. And they're meeting that requirement. There is horse chestnut and the red oak, which would be utilized to satisfy a portion of the Merlehay Road requirement. Plus, they got the new plantings for the remainder. And I did, in calculating everything, I did not double count preservation. So you could apply it to one or the other. So they're not getting double credits in places.
I think the last one was actually, so it's counted as a street tree.
I think that's the one I counted. I think it was the horse, maybe it was the bur oak. I didn't write it specifically.
Yeah, no,
But
it's the location of the borough.
they're meeting the minimum requirements is kind of the summary of that. The final landscaping discussion item is parking lot landscaping. And this was added into our code with the intent to try and mitigate some of that heat island effect that occurs with large expanses of impervious surfaces. And this is not additional landscaping that's required. It's more centered around the placement of plantings on the site so that they provide shade to those impervious surfaces. And they are meeting those requirements with the landscaping plan as presented with proper placement of plants. With that, I believe I touched on every topic in my staff report. Certainly could dive into further detail as needed, answer questions. We do have representatives of the applicant in the audience. I believe there might be members of the public that would like to address the council this evening. I'll just finish my comments with planning. The commission has considered this request. They have recommended approval subject to conditions as outlined in your staff report. A complete copy of it is also attached for your reference as well. With that, I will wrap up my comments.
Don't have any questions for Clayton?
I do have some there. How many trees are of the existing trees? How many of the, after the development's done, how many of the existing trees are preserved, including the ones that are gonna move around?
That 16.
I counted it twice, and I think it's only 14. On the, can you show the plan that was provided by the developer with the color, can. Yellow. There's a swamp white oak on the west side of the property that's shown as being preserved, but it doesn't show up in the drafted dimension plan.
18-inch swamp white.
Yep, it's further than I just need a clarification. Is that tree staying or not?
Trees up in that location. Up along that northwestern quadrant, you can see people of an 18-inch white pine, 15-inch white pine, 15-inch white pine, 24-inch swamp white oak. Yeah, that's the one you're referencing, I believe.
Correct.
So thank you. I can find that as two.
So that should have a red mark on it. I'm not sure where the other. Clayton, I'm confused. Talk about the bur oak that's along Royalty Road. I don't care which plan. I guess I would assume the dimension plan. See will work. And so we had an earlier conversation about critical root zone and how it's measured. And you're saying that, so they show this, you might show the audience what tree we're talking about, the bur oak there. Now, it shows that outline of that tree, I don't know, about 20 feet across. In reality, that tree is 70 feet worth of canopy, correct?
Yeah, and all those comment on behalf of the engineer explain it to me. This is just standard image that
Right.
that their
It's
software.
a representation, it's not real life.
It's not representing their canopy, it's trying to represent there's a tree here.
Yeah. And you're saying that they are falling within, when we said that that's a tree we want, you're gonna keep that tree, you have to protect 60% of the critical root zone. The critical root zone is 1 foot of radius for every 1 inch of caliper. So there's 24 inches of caliper. That means from the tree trunk out in every direction, 24 feet. That's all critical root zone. Is that correct? How far away is the parking curb from the trunk of that tree? Okay, so it's within that 24 foot of critical root zone. So why is that allowed, I guess?
Yes.
Is that because they're preserving extra root zone somewhere else?
So I'm gonna walk over here again to help explain. I moved on to page 8 of the site plan. This is the soil and erosion control plan. And we're articulating where they're not to be disturbed areas are. So we don't allow you to come within 10 feet of the trunk for proposed improvements. And so they're certain that here, and then they're preserving additional root zone by keeping sections between the curb line, the parking, and the existing sidewalk, and also tying that in so you're retaining that interconnected root zone between the bur oak, the horse chestnut, and the red oak there. That's how they're calculating based on those areas there.
But you're on the forestry, what is that outside group that you're part of?
I represent the American Planning Association on the Iowa Urban Tree Council.
Right. And how much of the root structure of that oak is in Merle Hay Road?
That I do not know.
Probably not much, right?
I'm speculating on that.
Well, I guess my point would be that if you're gonna really save a 24-inch bur oak tree that's only 55 years old and has the potential to grow and continue growing at 100 to hundred years old, you have to give it more room than that. And that has always been my concern. Also, we don't know what the grading plan exactly. And then my other comment is that I think that the yellow magnolia tree deserves to be saved. No one has ever come to me and told me I was wrong by saying it's the biggest one in Johnston. It's a gorgeous tree, and I think it deserves to be saved, not only because of its the largest in Johnston, a memorial tree, etc. I feel very strongly that that should be preserved. I have read through the documents, and I see that it causes you to space at the southern half of this development because you have to save that tree. And apparently, because we're engineers, it has to be a straight line. You can't change the building orientation at all. I that some accommodation. And then that's all I'm going to make for comments right now, but I need to come back. Thanks.
One thing I do want to I didn't point out, engineer did provide site plan, an alternative site layout design, which would preserve those trees on the southern end by shifting improvements north. But per their proposal here, that there's an offset there of save the magnolia.
And it's 4 other trees.
So I just wanted to make sure that it was noted that that was in the packet that is available for part of the discussion this evening.
Council, other questions for Clayton?
Mayor, I do. Clayton, the first question, can you just remind me, you talked about that western buffer from that standpoint. It appears that there is that dumpster area there. Why is it that dumpster, maybe I'm wrong, that's not what that receptacle is there, but why is that not considered, or why is it able to occupy the buffer?
I'm glad you asked that because I did not mention that. If you look in your resolution, condition number 5, city council acceptance of an alternative buffer which allows the installation of the dumpster enclosure within the required buffer of lot 2. So a standard buffer would say no structures including dumpster. So that is an explicit call out. City council does have the authority to allow for that. But I would also point out 7B, which is to relocate the dumpster so that it's not within the 10-foot public utility that's back there. So not to say the way the resolution is drafted, the dumpster enclosure could encroach into that buffer zone, but in combination with 7 feet, no more than 10 feet. So it would have to at least have a 10-foot setback, or we'd have to find some other accommodation for that existing utility some fashion.
Before I leave that subject, Clayton, do you mind if we get to page 10, only because I have it up and I realize you may have a different one, but
What?
Site plan. That, what I'm gonna call dashed line that's bisecting or nearly bisecting that dumpster area, is that the indication of the 10-foot utility?
This right here?
Yes.
Yes, that is accurate.
So regardless, that dumpster structure needs to move to the east, at least past that line, correct?
The way it's structured, if you to locate out of that easement, like you just suggested, or an alternative, to request and council approval vacation of that easement or some other alternative. But in its present form with that existing place, it would.
Right. And at this point, the only modification to that 20-foot buffer that we would be granting as written in the resolution would be somewhere within 20 feet, but not encroaching on that utility easement. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Remind me, if you can, which of the 2 parcels has excess parking or more parking than what's required?
Both of them exceed minimum parking requirements. The bank parcel exceeds it by 2 parking spaces. And Starbucks exceeds it by 15.
Clayton, I'm gonna put you on the spot here, and you can certainly defer, and we can hold this question later, but, I know you have studied these plans. Are there trees that need council approval that are found in the parking areas of that southern parcel, that building 2 parcel? In other words, are there trees identified for removal that require council approval? That parking specific areas.
The bald cypress, which is up along Raleigh Road and over crab apple. I'm going to blame on the species here. Down here, obviously you got the one you drive through.
Clayton, has there been any, I know they floated between the planning and zoning and our meeting tonight, that alternate plan shifting everything north. Has there been any study or review other than counting the number of trees that would result in removal if that alternate plan went through, as to how many would be impacted by that 60% radius rule of sorts? In other words, are all the remaining trees that would be saved in that alternate plan fall within that 60% rule?
Yes, the reason I say that is one that would be that alternative would be horse chestnut, shingle oak, the ginkgo, and black maple. With shifting everything else, all the others, the improvements don't really change in those locations, so they would remain consistent with what you see. Those ones are gone, stay on the south.
And if those were saved on the south, those would at least qualify for 60% of the root structure on all of those on the south?
That was not measured, but I speculate.
But they also would no longer be able to receive credit for the black maple that they are currently receiving credit for, because it now would be removed. Is that correct?
Correct, but I would point out that on the Starbucks slide, just the new plantings alone were exceeding the minimum, so losing the credit doesn't bring them out of compliance.
My last questions are more general to any kind of development, and that is, if a developer makes their best attempt to try to preserve 60% of that root zone and the tree still dies, is the developer responsible for removing and replanting a like tree or any kind of tree at that point?
So I'm gonna make you think back to the zoning code update. We had this particular conversation, and the discussion, as I recall it, how the code drafted as well, is if they preserve the trees according to the plan, follow our rules, 60% preserve the minimum, they're not storing materials in there, they're not damaging that root zone, and it still dies, you're not going to be penalized for that because you followed the rules outlined, did it according to the way asked you to do it. Now, if they break any of those rules, they store materials in there, they encroach their grade, whatever it may be, then yes, we have a penalty clause that we can apply. But if they make a good faith effort and they truly do it according to plan and as per code, they would not be penalized. Now, if they were using that tree as credit to satisfy something, they may be required to replace one tree in its place, but certainly not to the same level as penalty.
And does that apply for the trees that are proposed to be relocated as well? If they die upon relocation, unless they're just credit, there's no obligation to replace them.
As long as they relocate them according to plan. And that's why I have that condition on the transplant particularly. Some more information, some clear, defined. This is how much root ball needs to go. This is how they stored during construction. That way we make sure that we have the best chance of survival. But yeah, that same line, reasoning would apply there.
I think for now, my tree questions, and dumpster questions are, so I may have some legal questions for our council here.
Council, other questions?
I'm sorry, Mayor, I forgot to. In the list of plant material that are going back in, they have burning bush and buckthorn. Aren't those on our prescribed list for shrubs?
So
Well, if they're not, they're not.
what were they again? I had it open.
Say that again.
What were the?
Burning bush. You want them as the latest. And then buckthorn. Burn them.
Burning bush is a prohibited shrub. I catch that, so the burning bush would need to be swapped.
And I think buckthorn is too.
Thorn is not listed. But it's not.
Okay. But
But the burning bush
we're
for
gonna
sure.
have to do a revision because it's invasive, but okay, thanks.
I did not catch that, so nice. I'm done with my report. This might be a proper time for
Applicant. wants to comments. Anyone else in the audience who would like to make comments? Want to come forward? State your names. Your name and address. Even though I know. Temple 6721, Augustine Court. First question I have for all of you is, how many letters did you receive from constituents with concerns about losing trees on that lot? Oh, Annie, I will see, we all received emails and letters, but quite a few. Because we don't have very many people here tonight because they showed their concern with the letter writing campaign. I don't know. I don't know if they always see the same ones, but. The reason I bring it up is, by the time we found out about this possible sale from Corteva, that the land was up for sale, people started writing the letter campaign, but it was too late before we even wrote the letters. The land had already been sold. It's already a done deal. And I don't know what to say about that, except that, you know, I think, is it true it only sold for like $100? Something like that. So I'm just saying, just like for future, future things, $1 million, I mean, it isn't that much money in terms of what the city could have purchased the land, or maybe some private people could have kept it the way it was with the trees, you know. But I just hope that you also consider that, because that's in the past, but that it's not just this property, it's the Quick Star, it's the Caribou going in down the road from this. I think you can even go on 86 and look at the Starbucks where it is, and people coming in and out and get an idea of how many people are using Starbucks and what kind of use you'll see. But I don't know enough about traffic, how they study, but Starbucks is a very, very, very busy place. So I think that's all my comments. Thank you, Matt.
Judy Anderson, 5985 Northwest 61st Avenue, Johnston. Thanks for doing this, friends. I echo Annie's kind of dismay about how this all transpired. As I mentioned last week, I worked at the Garden Club for quite a few years, editing their garden magazine and their newsletter. And so I have a history of that building. The architect was Kendall Griffith, who was one of the designers of the Ryan building. It's also a fallout shelter. And when this building the idea was conceived by the National Gardeners, it went through some changes along the way, but they wanted it to be a green space in Johnston, an educational space. They put like tons of money and planted every one of the trees that are on that property. And I'm sorry that I wasn't involved in the comprehensive planning of, but I can't imagine that the powers that we want just to pave over the whole damn street. And so it could be an oasis. It could still be used as an educational a garden for people who want to the garden club. And you should go down the basement of that place. It's really cool. So it looks like it's a pretty much done deal, and I'm really sorry to see this all happening. And also, I don't know if you did this, but all of the tree identifying posts and the memorials are pulled up from the tree, and they're just stacked up next to the building. So that's kind of a wash. And the National Garden Club is pretty unresponsive for getting any of the files. But I know Jerry Scott, who was one of the last members, she has the prints for the building and some other items that I don't know if the city or if the Historical Society wants them, but it's a loss for this. And I just wanted to say that, so I'm sorry.
I will just comment that earlier today, Councilman Martin distributed to all of us a copy of an article that was in the Point Register. It's published 1669 at the time that National Men's Garden Club had the site, built the building, and kind of laid out a vision for what they wanted that building and that site. I found it very interesting. It was the first time I was aware of all of that information. What I was disappointed by, and I frustration that and shared here, and that is that what was laid out as a vision at the time never really came to reality. I mean, one building, I think there was 5 buildings there, educational opportunity, other activities there. And so what they laid out as the vision never became a reality. And unfortunately, as we know, in later years they abandoned that location, and the property legally went back to Corteva. So that's all unfortunate. We can't change that now. But the fact of the matter is, it did revert back to Corteva, and they chose to sell that property, which they legally could do. And that's why we're here tonight talking about the development of that property for a different purpose. We can wish that hadn't all happened, but it did happen. So we're trying to make the best of the situation that we have. There's a lot of trees on there. We're working with a developer to try and save as many trees as possible, recognizing that they have that property has been sold, and it's going to develop for a commercial purpose consistent with our comprehensive plan. So do appreciate your comments and share some of your frustrations, but we're working hard to make the best of it. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address the council on this item?
It's 6526 Northwest 84th. I'm involved parcel to the south, Crown Center. The owner built it in 1999. That north entrance gets used a lot. I had my office here for probably more than 10 years. And that's access I would turn in to get to my office in the morning. One of the problems, there's several problems with the site.
Kevin, if you're gonna walk away, please take the microphone, 'cause just for people who are trying to listen on Zoom.
Hello? So one of the concerns that I have is, and was addressed earlier, the traffic, turning north coming out of the site. There's a lot of people go that direction. And what's proposed here is just, 2 lanes. You have a turn in lane, you have a turn out lane. So we can see by the number of stacking they have here, and we've all seen what 86th Street looks like at that Starbucks, is people come out of here, we really only have room for 1 car here. It's enough room for 2. So that means if someone's coming out of here, if, they're probably going to be parking diagonally across this area to go south. Now, most traffic does go south, but with this access point splitting the way that it does, when you go to cross over this, it just creates, so if someone is here, someone pulls out here, you're pulling in, and someone's right in front of you. This access worked fine when the garden club was here because we didn't have the traffic we're going to have now. And so I have concerns about where that access is located. In my opinion, this could be pulled back and, allow the cars to come out more of a square type configuration, which would be more typical, and then allow them to go this way. But as it is now, this pinch point is so close to Merle Hill Road, we really only have room to stack 1 car here. So, and again, it's cars turn in coming from north, and we rely pretty heavily on traffic from this direction to get into our center. This creates a problem. So I don't know how to solve it right now. I just know it's a problem, and it's in the configuration it's in. It's not going to go away. So, thank you.
Can I just have a real quick question for Kevin? So your site has 2 full access points. Am I correct? It has north and south.
Yes, we have lines northwest.
So you have 2, and they're both full accesses, so not just a right. That's the south.
Yes.
That's currently.
So, and we did work with the developer to the south of us on their site, and we did provide a cross easements. We pick up a tremendous amount of their traffic as well. They also don't have good access coming out of their site. They have to drive around, back up. And again, a tremendous amount of traffic comes up and use that. So it certainly works okay. The alignment works out good. And we have stacking where they can pull up on to the east side of the street and make the turn to go north or south. That has not been a problem. This will be. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address the council on this item? Do we have anybody on? Does the council have any questions for the applicant?
Yes, I do. Hi.
Hi.
thanks.
Should I give my
Um,
name and address? So Erin Olin Dyke, Civil Design Committee my address, 4121 Northwest Drive. Yep.
Thank you. I'm trying to get to the large site plan submittal, the city council staff report.
Particular page.
Page 53. Well, in this page, it's talking about the history of the purchase of the site and probably predates you a little bit. Anyway, so I'm not sure if this is a question to be directed directly to you or if there was someone else that was better suited to answer it. Basically, what this page starts off by saying, it says here that on January 31st, that Penta entered into a real estate purchase agreement with Pioneer for the property. And at that point, then there was on February 7th and again on February 17th, with staff. And in this written letter, it's saying that our staff gave assurances that there would be access to Pioneer Parkway, both into the site and out of the site. I would like to know if any of the discussions about the tree removal requirements were discussed at that time. I think they're building. You probably worked with those.
Oh, I think I was at that meeting. I mean, there was discussion that, that there would probably be discussion on tree removal.
Okay,
But there was not discussion on specific trees that I recall. Do you recall that?
and there was no plans, no plan showing building, parking lot layout, anything like that.
We had a conceptual plan.
We did have a
Yeah.
conceptual plan, but it was it officially given to the staff for review?
Staff. If we did, it was a paper copy that we brought to the pre-application staff.
Okay. And so you got comments back about there would be concerns about tree removals.
Yes, there was the general discussion that there would be some concern over some of the tree limbs. But nothing specific, not about any specific.
So the expectation was that you were going to provide plans that would fit with our tree ordinances, that you were going to be able to satisfy our tree ordinances in terms of protecting trees, because apparently, according to this plan, there's a whole lot of trees in yellow that it's approval to remove.
Correct. We knew that we weren't going to be able to save all of the trees. Because I mean, there's trees placed all over the site. It's hard to develop around them.
Okay. So you knew that there was going to be a city council meeting where there was discussion about individual trees.
Which I said that. I said that I knew that there was a potential discussion. Honestly, I never expected to stand up here and talk about very specific trees.
Well, I understand. Before this property was purchased from Corteva, did anyone know about the history of the site, or did
Have to set up the developer.
Travis Sisson, Penta Partners, 7300 West Town Parkway, West Des Moines.
Yeah, did you know about the history of the site before the January 31st?
Specific history.
Pretty specific, yeah.
I know what the site was.
They had trees on it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. And then you met with city staff, and city staff said there would be some requirements to save these trees.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All cities have ordinances.
Okay.
in
All right.
general regarding
And
safety.
so, but there was never a plan submitted where, but discussed exactly how many trees the would get to rule on which ones they would save or not. Well, the ones in yellow are the ones that we learn.
That comes
You
through
have to get permission from
the process.
right, you have to get permission for those.
Correct.
And you do that before you buy the property or closed on.
Before you buy any property, it's always conditioned on the city.
Okay, I'm glad to know.
I just have a real quick question, since you're on the track. So, the company Penta Partners, I presume. Like this, on property. How? Property. Are you focused exclusively on Metro?
We're Des Moines Metro.
Okay.
I can give you one very specific example of a very heavily treated site. 12 acres of trees out in West Des Moines, continental western side on 73 on the west end of my office. That's been completely developed. It developed, I think, 76 to 78 continental western. I think we had festival lights or some type of thing for about 20 years. As long as that's been a complete.
And you have experience, I mean, obviously. Get approval for the site plan. Have to go through a process of protecting trees. I mean, you have a process. You have your company has experience with that. You have that before, have a track record of, you don't feel uncomfortable. It's not like something here that is something outside of your area of expertise or area that is something you feel like you got, you know, the right people to hire properly.
Absolutely.
Questions for the applicants?
I do, Mayor. I am looking at an exhibit that is titled 5560 Merle Hay Road Tree Removal Exhibit 2023-10-3. It has the kind of faint or light shaded coloring. It has the yellow circles. It's a single page document. The title bar, that is correct. I'd like a little more explanation as to why the omission on some of the, was this created by you? It was, okay. And so what Councilmember Martin already identified was that there were some omissions made on this document. It appears that there was a swamp, oak, white swamp oak niner. I think I add a couple more tree varieties every time I. But the reality is, there's at least one tree that's marked on here, that it's not marked on here, that it's going to be removed. Are there other trees? In other words, have you made other?
That would have been a complete, I created this last minute on Friday. So yes, that swamp. Like,
So I walked the site on Friday with this plan that was provided, thinking that that tree was going to be saved. I didn't know until I came here today that this tree is not going to be saved.
that's in our site plan.
I understand that, but at this point, I'm getting revised document after revised document after revised document, and you omit that. Correct?
It was a complete error on my part. Like I said, I was asked to create this last minute on Friday, and yes, we missed it. But it wasn't our.
What other trees are you missing? Have you gone back and verified every other tree? Okay, I understand that. It's my understanding, based on that memo that was written by Mr. Sisson, that the faux traffic study was in fact reimbursed by the developer, correct? At any point, was there discussion about, or perhaps even planning? I'm still trying to get what the queuing will look like at that south entrance to Merle Hay. Have any concept that you can provide as far as how cars will stack as they want to traverse out of that south exit, either to turn southbound on Merle Hay or potentially wait crossing go north?
Not have. Of course, we've been asked to provide that, so.
It was my understanding that the Planning and Zoning Commission though also brought up the traffic at that site. So you prepared a document on Friday afternoon, missing a red X on a tree in response to the trees, but you didn't prepare a document with regard to the traffic queue.
Asked to provide that, so
All right, I understand. If you were asked, would you be able to provide that? Okay. So another question I do have, I was grateful for the notations that were provided with regard to the removal of the trees. Talk to me a little bit, however, about why excess parking spots on that lot 2 or that building 2. When I say excess, greater than what's required for the plan, especially when we know that trees are of great concern to this property, some of which have to get individual approval by council to be removed. Was there any consideration, or is there any possibility of consideration to reduce the number of parking spots to save even more trees in that regard? Or is that something that can't be done based on prospective tenant?
I think the combination of multiple things, we literally looked at every tree on the development to figure out if it could be saved. We do have requirements for tenants of what they need for parking, and that would be one of them for Starbucks. Make sure they have adequate parking. And based on looking through the plans, even if we started eliminating stalls, I don't know that there's any trees. And some of the trees that I think were referenced earlier are actually in drive lanes. So we wouldn't have circulation on the site.
What is the number of parking spots that would be required for Starbucks? They would allow?
The 35 that we have.
That is the absolute minimum that Starbucks would position.
They know their business better than
I
when it comes down.
certainly.
And they want to make sure they have adequate parking, adequate snacking. A lot of their requirements exceed. Or what they
Talk to me a little bit about that dumpster. Obviously, it's taken exception on our part, but at the same point, still falls within that utility. Do you have anything in mind as to where that dumpster actually would locate?
I'm assuming would have to take out some parking. The reason it's located where it's at is completely, for trucks and vehicles, have the circulation. Also proximity to Riverside Road.
It's got them telling me, however, you can't take out parking spots because you're at the bare minimum of what Starbucks would require. So how are you going to put a dumpster in for parking stalls that are required for Starbucks?
They will have to make an exception.
Could be also an exception for some trees. Those that you're taking out for parking spots or for traffic conduits?
Which stalls, I guess you'd have to explain it, which trees can be saved by stalls.
Let's just look over at the indications. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a computer engineer, all right? So landscape is not my thing, but certainly making sure that Johnston stays pretty. If I look at one of the trees that's identified and noted on that same document that I referenced before, of which there was an addition, item number 4 indicated southern access for this site, and that there's a tree right there. So I'm specifically at that building parcel 2, nearest Merle Hay Road. It is documented as item 4, and then immediately to the south and east of it is a green tree that could be removed. I realize that that one is without permission, but both of those trees fall within parking stalls. Right there, those are the 2. Was there any consideration to save those to reduce the number of parking stalls?
We actually did consider the stalls on the east side of the lot. Saving those trees, matter of how wet our drive lane is. You have to have adequate drive lane circulation.
that yellow tree. Out 60% of it. So. We've got drive aisle over park.
And what about the green tree that while you can remove without permission, uh, not try to save that? It is not in the driveway.
It's not allowed species.
Ash tree. Yeah.
Let's look at the tree over here north of the property. I will go to the map so you can see it. Also, category, which if I remember correctly is a tree that doesn't need council permission, but is not an invasive species or a tree that we're looking to eliminate from within our city borders. Was that tree considered for preservation?
Now again, it's in our parking lot, right?
It isn't in a driveway, it's in a parking lot, yes.
But if you look at the radius of the tree, it's a good.
I don't feel like you have taken it seriously. I'm honest. I realize that you're working hard to do your job. We're working hard to do our job too. Thank you for answering my questions.
Any other questions? Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to address council on this item? Not.
I'm sorry, I did have one question for the applicant. So I want to talk a little bit about the alternative. October 10th. So, and this goes to the question of traffic flow to the south. And so I'd like your perspective, and I realize, I'm not a traffic engineer. Traffic engineer has required by city requirements, has provided a document that meets all the requirements of the city has. But I was interested from your perspective, because under this design, it shifts the Starbucks to as traffic comes out of the Starbucks, there's more room to before it gets to exit, that south exit, that is a better traffic flow and preferred traffic flow from.
Absolutely.
Is there any other questions, council?
Mayor, I have some questions for legal counsel if possible. Christine, our current city ordinance requires us to have to indicate or at least grant approval for the removal of those specific identified trees. This type of ordinance that we have is consistent. In other words, are other cities and do other cities have similar ordinances to this?
Across the country, yes. I would say I am not personally familiar with too many that are as specific as Johnston, state of Iowa, but I would say the trend is that this type of an ordinance is becoming more common. But yes, these ordinances.
And the commonplace or the fact that it's becoming more common surmises why are cities beginning to adopt these types of ordinances?
Well, there's more information out there about you know, the benefit the trees provide to how it relates to global warming and all of those types of things. So I imagine a lot of that is sustainability goals that you have. And that would be nice.
Aren't more questions? Motion, and then we'll have discussion.
Still have a question. How would you like to- Is that not the property dump on the property? Who owns and controls that driveway entrance? Who- How is that? How is that possible? Shared entrance.
I heard several different questions in there, so I might have to look at several people. It's not abnormal to have shared accesses similar to this. In fact, I did pull some records, and it appears that this access was actually constructed by the city of Johnston in 01, 02 timeframe. So we as a city established this, and maybe it was 99. It was in that early 2000s timeframe. Normally, there would be an easement in place that specifies who's responsible for maintenance, costs, etc. For whatever reason, I don't know, I was not around at that time. That document never got recorded. It maybe got created, but I can't find any record of it, and no one's been able to provide one to me to date. So I would have to maybe defer over to Kevin to know how it's being maintained as of today.
How is that still? Dump on.
Maybe something Christine could chime in on how utilization of access easements.
Normally, if you're approving a subdivision plat or a site plan or something where there's joint access, a condition of that approval would be that there's cross easements by both property owners, so that property owner A gives property owner access for now, and property owner B, property owner A access for now, so they're joint cross easements benefiting each person.
Has that been done on this? Have that crossings?
No, and that's what I was referring back to in my comments was southern site, when it was approved, it had a condition that be established and recorded. For some reason, that never got recorded. The approval in front of you today includes a similar condition that prior to issuance of the building permit for lot 2, which would be the Starbucks, that would include that access, they would have to establish those easements. So the requirement, as Christine alluded or indicated, is there. Just the document has not been.
Cross.
I would defer to Colas here, but his site plan approval did require it, so I would look to Christine on it, what the city enforcement ability on. Make sure that.
Well, it's a condition of the building permit for the southern development, is that that was established. That's an issue for the private property owners to resolve, but that is resolved.
How about, and I'm gonna maybe ask a question, Christine, if you don't mind, and I'll allow her to answer. Can the city require the southern owner to establish the easement per their site plan approval? It was not recorded. It is on their site plan approval from like 2000.
That comes down to, it's a little more complicated, try, but the ideal is that the property owners work that out so that once the site can be developed, ways you can establish easements by necessity. If one was never formally recorded, but for a number of years, go to court and get it that way. I mean, there's options besides.
That's something that should be taken care of. before it comes to us.
I mean, I think the commission to require that resolved. If there's a concern that, you don't want more than the building permit to be used until that happens. Right, but to me, I think it's clear. It's not that setback 6 is cleaned up.
You have the benefit of the Cole's body saying he certainly is under no obligation to come up with anything, but I don't know if he has.
Well, I think
Is that something else?
like this. And from my personal experience, Brandon's kitchen, that's a nightmare. When Brandon's kitchen, entrance, and hard stack of people in there, it's a nightmare. And I see that happen here. Starbucks, that's what we all. And I can decide when I hear it from both sides. It's all worked out and everybody understands. Before I, so I can sign for it. Appropriate time. Appropriate time.
Before you do that, Councilman Cole suggested some discussion. Typically, what we do is we have a motion, second, and we have discussion about like that. Have an alternative also proposed. And I think what I hope is, in terms of a discussion, is to get a sense of which of those options, if either, council members are leaning towards or have some thoughts on. So I think we have that discussion, figure out where the motion's gonna go.
So I guess in response to your suggestion, here's why I don't support taking. Typically, I think it would make some sense to take, but there's a couple of factors that I think are important. One is to our next council, which is not the typical 2 gap, it's 3 weeks. So the bigger gap between this council and the next council. And we are getting toward construction season. So every day that goes by is a pretty significant delay. Plus, we already earlier this fall tabled construction or that's the next agenda item. So that's they have not been able to have table that. So I think that I think this issue of the easement is it's already built into the staff report as a condition. It's already required. So to me, that's the right way to handle it. I think if we start kind of not approving things unless everything's worked out front, that sort of empowers folks. I would prefer not to table it on that and talk about is there support tonight for one of these potential options for a site plan and kind of talk that through a little bit more. So that of course, that's just my perspective. Other than more perspective, that would be my thought on this.
So I guess if the design on the site plan was modified because of the trees or because of the trees in and out, the thoughts of Mr. Cole's. So changing the site plan after the vote tonight, how does that work?
Well, I don't think that the question of whether there's anything changes the site plan layout. question whether
This, if the property owner doesn't agree to it, and had the suggestion to the west, so that it's not a two cars heading in at the same time. That would be a modification of site plan.
moving the exit to the west or moving? Yeah. Well, and I think that's why to me, there is an option on the table site plan that does move it to the actually driveway to the north, right?
No, I'm talking. So there's more room for people to back up from the intersection.
But well, if you do it right like that, you in essence have to, right after you come through the drive-through, you have to do it hard, right? I think that's kind of hard to and I think that sort of comes down to, obviously if you take that approach, then, and if the magnolia trees are clearly gone, and if we desire to do that, I think it kind of depends on what the council's preference. Well, again, but that's under the alternative that's outlined in the October 10th letter. That would save the magnolia trees. Right. So that is, those are the two, that's the alternative site plan. That's in the staff pack, it's in the packet. That is a way to, if the desire is to save the magnolia trees, this is an alternative that saves the magnolia trees. And I think makes for better traffic flow out of the site to help address some of those issues around it. Whether Mr. Coles agrees to it, I think that's really going to come down to conversation between Mr. Coles and the developer. I think that based on what staff have told us that Mr. Coles is obligated to, that's probably going to have to be something that Mr. Coles, Travis are going to have to figure out how to resolve. But I don't know, from my perspective, that requires us to delay action.
And like the sign saying they don't. And something has to change on the site plan. Then what?
Well, then the developer could come back with an alternative site plan for us to discuss.
Yeah, so the site plan code provision does provide for administrative level approval of minor revisions to the site plan, so. But anything that's significant, you have to go back through city council. And sort of the minor changes that are listed are minor relocation of driveways or parking spaces, if it still meets the minimum. So they could.
That's what I'm looking for.
So I would have a comment about that. I'm not sure that I would be willing to vote for that pending approval of the two property owners to come to an agreement on this entrance before they get an occupancy permit. For me, it would be, they can't have a grading permit until that was done. And that kind of ruins the whole construction schedule of.
Well, that's your perspective.
That would be, I'm letting my fellow council members know that I don't want to take this kind of risk where we were cutting down trees and then find out, oh, we have a new idea. We can't put it back.
Well, and maybe what you could do, obviously, potential resolution. Yeah, if there's no objection, the applicant would like to.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, my name is Jim Goki. I'm General Counsel for Penta Partners, 7300 West Town Parkway, West Des Moines. in regards to Councilmember Evans' questions here, I want to point out a few things that are not being mentioned and are being overlooked here. Number one is that Laurel Hay is a farm market road, state highway. Entrances there are governed by DOT. And they limit the number of entrances on and off the roads to avoid traffic conflicts. That's why they ask and require, and when they can, that those entrances be shared entrances between property owners on the property line. You can notice half of that entrance is located on Penna properties. And a partner's property, half of it is on Mr. Cole's property. If Penna Partners and Mr. Cole's could not reach an agreement and an accommodation on that, it's going to harm both of those parties. Because then they could put a track right down the middle of it, one would have access. So we're arguing about something that I think would be a very clear solution, that it's something that will be done, has to be done. And whether or not it needs to grow a foot or two of a painted line or something like that to give more direction to traffic in and out of the site, that will be determined through the rest of this process as we're trying to decide on what site is approved, how it will come together. But there's benefits and burdens on both parties. And it's to both parties' benefit and both parties' financial gain to cooperate together and share the expenses on the upkeep and maintenance and access of that property, of that drive, so that it benefits both properties equally. Happy to answer your question.
So what's on?
I'll go first. I'm not in favor of the I'm very not in favor of the plan that was presented in the original package. I believe that magnificent magnolia tree, which was planted as a memorial, should be saved. I'm still not in favor of the alternate because I do not believe that the bur oak tree that's along Laurel Hay Road has enough root zone that it's saved so that it can continue to grow and establish itself into the beautiful thing it is now. I think if we go ahead with the alternate in the current plan, I think what we'll have done is runted that tree so that it will pretty much just stay at it is and probably going to decline, which is counter to what we're trying to do here. Is if you're going to save a tree, you save a tree. You don't just go half at it. And so that is why I'm opposed to the alternate. I think it's pretty clear that the applicants knew that there was going to be tree removals that are tree preservation required on the site. It's not a surprise. They could have done more work with staff to get some more opinions from us, etc. They're unwilling to remove parking stalls because this is a requirement of the businesses that are going to lease it. But they already said they could figure something out if they couldn't put the dumpster on the property, the west property line. So there is ways to make adjustments to do the right thing. If we're going to save these trees, then go all in. So that is where I'm at right now. Thank you.
Comments?
My question is for anyone who can answer. What is the procedural steps that would need to be taken to formally consider the alternate proposal that was floated later last week? In other words, two things come to mind here, and I target that second alternate proposal more specifically because Council Member Cope, in addition to the applicant, pointed out that may need at least a little bit of the queuing of traffic on that south entrance exit. That's probably a very big concern of mine. in fact, it is a big concern of mine in this entire decision. With that being said, that results then in different trees that potentially have to be considered for removal, that I believe also require council approval. Does that alternate plan though need to go first before planning and zoning? Or there needs tonight to be able to potentially discuss that plan? It is distinctly different in removing the vegetation that's in place in an alternate plan. It seems minor as, even though I know it's trying to relocate a drive.
Yeah, I guess I would first, consider that a form of site plan submittal, the alternative, or was that just a concept?
It was submitted as a concept.
And there's certainly ripple modification that we have to look at. Well.
So what would be the process?
I think it'd be a council's comfort level. we- Your motion was to approve the alternative concept subject to all the standard zoning conditions being complied with. Staff. Comfortable with that if you want to bring it back. then- Well,
Yeah, I don't think it would have to go back to. Question is whether you're comfortable with the information provided as is, or whether you would want to see the formal tree removal plan based on this, you know.
No, I appreciate that. I think, so feel free to continue on. I'll express how I got it. Okay. I think from a big picture standpoint, to me, a couple of really important decisions council has made over the last 5 years. One was our consideration of the comprehensive plan, cited in the staff report, identifying how this property should be used. That 2040 comprehensive plan was approved in November of 2020. So I don't know, Brian, if you were on the council at that point, all the rest of us were. So we were part of that process. We looked at this, at all the sites in town, and we labeled it commercial. We didn't label this as, hey, something is a site that we have to protect, or in any way indicate to anybody else who's looking to develop the property something that they should not consider for commercial. And then we followed it up with the zoning. And as part of that zoning process, we also did a very look throughout the whole city. We looked at different parts and we said, this should be zoned this way and this should be zoned that way. And again, as part of that process, we did not indicate or change zoning of the plan. Zone is commercial. Now, I acknowledge, and I think this is a challenging site because of the tree. And I don't think there's anybody in the city or in this room tonight that would disagree with that. And I think that everybody in this room has worked incredibly hard. And I want to say, because it's been insinuated tonight, that the developer has not worked hard. I don't know of any developer who's ever worked harder on a project to make it what the city is looking for. I feel very strongly about that. As a developer who decided to buy property, I think it's kind of regrettable. So I think we have to take all of this into account. And the developer has worked and taken feedback. We've asked questions. Can you do this? Can you do that? We have tried to get them to develop new documents. They develop a new document. They make one small mistake and we crucify them. That is irresponsible. And so I think it's really important that we look at the big picture from this standpoint. And I'm sorry if I'm being set, but I'm really disappointed with some of the conversation about that. From my standpoint, from what I've heard from everybody that I have talked to, it is really important, and this goes back to a conversation I had with Julie Anderson Friday night at the football. She wanted to make sure that we protect trees, especially along Merle Hay Road. And that's a conversation that when I had with Councilperson Martin as well, that she feels very strong that we need to make sure that we have a lot of trees along that Merle Hay corridor, so shaded area. And I think the developers work really hard to do that. They are protecting a very prominent tree in the corner with 100% of the root zone. And they are meeting the city's requirement as it relates to the borough. I would love it if there's some way that they could maybe expand that with by sort of parking if they have the ability to do that. And I would like to give them the opportunity to do that if they can expand that borough zone, because clearly that's a priority. And I think that's a tree that also is along Merle Hay. I think that's really positive. And I think there's benefit in saving that magnolia tree. I think that should be saved. And I think also by saving the magnolia tree, we take a step to improve what potentially could be challenging parking situation, or not parking, but traffic flow as it comes out. So my preferred approach tonight would be to approve an amendment to the site plan based on the concept that was submitted to us on October 10th by the developer, which protects those magnolia trees south. And at the same time gives the developer the opportunity to start the project, give them an opportunity to potentially, they've heard a lot of feedback from us tonight on how to deal with the dumpster and how to maybe deal with the magnolia, the borough trees. There's an opportunity to have to expand that. To me, that is a really balanced approach that takes into account a lot of the concerns that we've heard from our citizens. And I know Annie's no longer here, but we did hear those concerns. We all heard those concerns. And I think we're working really hard to take those concerns into account. I can't think of any project that I have spent, my wife's here tonight, and she can attest to this, how much time we have all spent trying hard to work on this project. And I gotta say, of all the people who worked really hard on this project, a lot of them are sitting in that first row. Aaron, the engineer, and Travis, and other folks, they have worked really hard in responding to requests. When the magnolia tree was identified to them as a priority, they came up with an alternative that protects them. And I have to respect that as the council. And so that to me is an approach that I think is workable and meets, I think, the objective not only of this council, but also the folks in our community. So I was want to hear what it is.
Other discussion?
Thank you very much. Councilperson Tom of Doc. So I'm a very pragmatic person, and I'm very practical on what needs to be done and what not needs to be done. So I understand this is a commercial property, cannot stop that being developed. We also need to understand that the trees are a very important part of the city, and identified trees for a long time now, so I like to keep that as well. But having said that, there's a few things that could be said. But the conversation we're just having when you're up here and talking about a few things, it sounded like that you were not well prepared for this. Or you had some asked, not well prepared. That gives me a little pause for concern that is it something that you're going to cut down the tree, ask for this later? Oh, you just well, these plans as you defined as that's what you're going to plan. So I need some kind of way assurance that you will not cut down trees and then ask for this. That's not what I would like to see. It's I got the part of the plan that Starbucks and the bank just travel, but also that fact, trees. Don't make a mistake of cutting down the tree and asking for funds. Thanks.
projects that I've developed, I've spent more time in this project hands-on, which I'm hands-on in every project. We've literally exhausted every possible solution for these trees. I mean, I probably know as much or more than my engineer about this project, because we talk about it almost every single day. You know, when we have a plan and a site plan, we follow that site plan. That's what we, you know, if the trees are gonna be protected, we're gonna be protected. We have no issue with that. We went through rendition after rendition on this site to figure out how to save as many trees possible. That's been made very clear to us by Clayton. You know, for instance, we had that conversation early in the process, make sure they can protect the trees. If you look at our percentage of green space, we have a larger percentage of green space than anybody in Emerald Hill, I would bet, site by site. You know, if we've got a 25%, we far exceed that. You know, we have 6,000 square foot of building on the site. The building to the south of us is 19,000 feet. I mean, we're doing everything we can to put a small footprint of building, as small a footprint for parking as we can to service the site. Because if our tenants aren't successful, the site's not successful. You know, so we make sure that we're saving what we can. We went tree by tree to make sure could it be saved or not be saved. And the trees that were brought to me were trees that are in drive aisles, parking areas, those type of things. And Aaron's gone through in great detail of putting those circles of can they be saved or not. You know, or do they impede travel on the site, circulation on the site, you know, those types of things. I'll give you an example. I planted 120 trees at my house in the last 3 years. We're not anti-tree. We just have to make sure that the site develops properly so that the tenants are happy, the city's happy. And we're trying to find that balance. I mean, that's the reality. But the gentleman next to me is my general contractor. You know, there's a reason he's here tonight, because he needs to hear what's being said, how much we protect these trees, you know, so that we follow exactly what's in the site plans. That we have our fencing up, materials, we're not cutting them out. We're very familiar with these types of projects, you know, and so I feel very confident being able to. Coming back to Johnston and asking, you know, or asking for forgiveness probably is the best plan of trees. You know, I don't think that would set very well with anybody around here. So that's not on our radar. You know, we want to protect everything that we possibly can. And that's the only reassurance I can give. You know, we know how challenging the site is. The site is what the site is. You know, it's probably one of the rare sites in the city of Johnston that's fully treated. You know, nothing about that now. It's just trying to maintain the best project.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So there's a lot of people who have had sent letters, emails from cities, and a lot of them, most of them have been concerned about will this be treated, will that be treated, safe or not. I appreciate what you're all done to make sure that what is safe. You guys will work out the rules. Thank you very much for your.
Other discussion?
Well, I kind of want to get sort of a sense of where. I would be comfortable to approve site plan with October 10th or less. If there's those by us. So it's the attachment. It's this one that we're looking at, and the reason I call it October 10th is that there's a letter. So this is page 2, and I don't claim you can scroll up to page 1. So that's the letter from, and it's signed by Aaron Blackshirt, and so it's dated October 10th. And so to me, this has it has. I mean, the 3 things I've kind of heard tonight are obviously tree preservation, protecting the magnolia, and dealing with the the traffic flow out of the south. And to me, this site it's kind of a wash on tree protection because it saves the magnolia, but it does lose some other significant trees. So it's kind of a wash that way. But it does save the magnolia tree. And I think it also has the benefit of, I think, giving us better traffic flow out of the south. And so, the traffic engineers have said they have, done the counts and all that type of stuff, and nobody, from a traffic professional standpoint, looked at the layout as it was considered by the P&Z original layout, said that is bad or faulty. But if there's a concern that it is not the best, to me, this is a better traffic flow. Now, if there's 3 votes on the council, I can go the other original proposal as well. The downside to that proposal to me is, one, it doesn't save the magnolia tree, which I think that's important. That's really a judgment call for people to make. But also, it doesn't have as good a traffic flow. So it really kind of depends on where we put this.
The council members want to express their views on the alternative plans that exist.
Mayor, I will, at the risk of my comments being misconstrued by other council members, I'll try to make it as simplistic as possible. The reality is I ask questions so I can learn. So that we all can learn. So that we can make a case for what is best for our city. It's not trying to imply that someone intentionally tried to mislead us. I know mistakes happen. And I wanted to make sure that I heard out of your words and out of your mouth that you didn't intend to do it. And you said that multiple times, and I appreciate that. I need to make the best decision I can with all of the facts that are provided to me. And so when some of those facts are incorrect, it begins to cause pause. Am I suited? Am I capable? Am I ready to make the best decision possible? It's why I kept pressing for the question of, do we have any kind of alignment or illustration of the queuing to leave out of that south entrance? So that I can make the best decision possible, because I certainly have been a part of those other exits from drive-throughs and from other things where they're shared exits, and they're clunky at best. They're dangerous at worst. I don't want that to happen in something that we actually have control to make those decisions. When it comes to this specific proposal, it's better than the last. And I think it's better than the last for all of the reasons that Councilmember Cope illustrated. Saving the magnolia. I would even go further about, in that same stretch, if I'm not mistaken, that was one of the trees identified for even relocation up and transplanting. I always worry about that as to how viable a tree after transplanting is. I know full well that the site needs to be developed in a commercial way, because quite frankly, it is part of the plan. And I believe that we award and we certainly commend our city staff as well as each other on trying to be visionary and set that plan for the future. The site provides some unique challenges and also is unique though from a green perspective within our city. So whatever decision we make tonight, whether it's the first plan, the second plan, or no plan, the reality is that something else is going to come along. I understand that. And I want us to continue to evaluate with the same earnestness. I want our developers to spend more time than they've ever spent on any other project before, because we care about the city and we want them to care about the city and the development that they're placing here. So I don't regret asking you to jump through hoops. I don't think we're, pun intended, barking up the wrong tree by asking you to prove why you are doing what you're doing, the decisions you're making. It's because we want the best. They're the best. And if I have to choose between two, it certainly would be this. Better for what was expressed before. So I would certainly welcome this alternative.
Other council members? On the alternative?
Have enough information to take it forward.
So the other item that we just have to verify is just, for example, the utility line would probably just reduced in length. So those are items we can certainly look at with staff. I don't think they would impact layout or site design. But there's certainly details that but I feel that we have enough information extremely after the fact. Make the site plan adjustments in accordance with city code.
So, to move this along, I really don't want to vote for this. I really don't. But it sounds like it sounds like you're gonna get the votes. So I'm going to ask that that I will vote for the alternate plan, the second plan, the plan that's up here, as long as I get 2 additional parking spaces on each side of the bur oak tree. And that tree gets more space to grow. That's the price of my vote. Otherwise, I will vote.
I'm still at the point where I don't know that I have all the information to make a solid vote and feel good about it. And I understand the construction schedule, but it's not my fault that they're bringing it to us in October.
So, Jim, I think it's a great question. So, I just could, question.
Trying to get this all filtered through with sponge pouring. And I'm still just, I'm not solid on yes or no. I look across and I look at people and I see a lot of that. But there's still some, I don't know what they are, but there's still some, gotta do the right thing.
Are there like relax?
I just,
Because we have the applicants here, we have staff.
it's missing the tree. And I do that. I'm also landscape architect and I work. But now we're jumping into option 2. And we've got all the site plan information for the first option, drawings, specs, all laid out. And then we have this option 2, it's a site plan. And that's why I asked, is there enough information on that alternate site plan to cover us if something blows up? And right now, I'm not confident that that's it.
So pose that question. Like you said, yes, to this. Do you think there's something lacking? Like, is there something more you can say to address council Evans' concerns?
I would just note, I'm not alone.
I would just note that if the motion is to recommend option 2, the alternative, I think the conditioning can be added that revised site plans are submitted to address all the normal zoning requirements. And so staff can review all of those, make sure that full detail and see their original submittal is all done on that alternative. And obviously, if something weighs into the substantial change beyond what you approve, bring it back to you. But otherwise, the staff is comfortable, the council is comfortable, that critically work through the process.
So I'm, for example, things that would get detailed is, the relocation of where plant materials are on the site. Presumably, you'd still have the same plant materials, they just be in a different location. grading lines, that may be one item that, the alternative doesn't have is. Sorry, grading lines around these southern trees to make sure there's proper root protection zone. That's probably the, if you're looking for something that's missing, that's probably it. So, considering the original here, pretty minimal grading change in that location anyway. I can't imagine that we're gonna impact the trees, but I guess it.
would a diagram of the queuing coming out of there with the alternative layout that can provide that help as well.
Safe. Does it? Couple of things.
What are the two things that are out there? And I didn't hear your question.
What I suggested was missing pieces if I think Councilman Burkhart asked earlier if they could provide a diagram of the queuing with this alternative layout, if that would help solve some of the issues or help some of the issues that we have with the queuing.
I guess I'm gonna go back on this and where I'm coming from is we've got a lot going on Merlehead. You guys have done a beautiful job, and this is going to be a beautiful addition to what we started on Merlehead. This site, we are getting watched, scrutinized to make sure we do it right. And so this is not a typical development for us. It's really not. We're running out of commercial development on Merlehead. And what we do have left, we're treating very special. So when I give a vote for this, I know I'm going to catch it from both sides. It's just a given. So please don't take it personal. I'm just trying to make sure that whichever way I go on this is going to be the best. Everybody's going to be happy with it. It's what we have to listen to the very first. So I will support option 2 as long as I have the assurance from our staff that it's okay. That we can get through it without having to come back to council and say, oops. That's why I asked that.
Councilman, what assurances do you want us to have?
May I, Mayor, to make sure I understand the assurances that he's seeking, because I don't at the moment. There was an offer by staff to try to seek out some clarification as far as the diagram or illustration of queuing. That's something I would like to see it, but I don't necessarily see it before making the decision, as long as it's a condition of such an illustration doesn't provide alarm or concern by staff. That's something, for instance, that.
Yes.
Okay. Is it also your hope that they would provide a complete set of site plan, including everything from vegetation, utilities, diagrams, things along those lines, and as long as those don't raise significant alarm, that we can move forward?
Yes.
Now, the last one, to some extent, has to do with the current provision in place right now that no building permit would be granted on that building too, if there wasn't agreement struck between the property owners. Are you either comfortable with that, or would you rather see a suggestion as stated by Councilmember Martin that prior to a grading permit, that easement gets resolved? My motion. motion on the table.
Well, but I just wanted to make sure that Jim had that.
I understand that. I would support certainly that condition of the grading permit. If it allowed some reassurances that it's been actually withdrawn.
I think that gives too much power. to Mr. Cole. I think it's appropriate. I think that we have to keep it balanced, and that's why I would look at the site plan that was approved. in 2000 Anyway,
Something that could hold this up? I don't know. That's why I asked the question. So I would actually say both. From some assurance that they worked out, which I'm sure it will. Have its condition. I'm pretty have the information before the green happens. So that they know, so that staff is, ready to go.
I'm comfortable with saying that they have to submit all the plans prior to the break. I don't have a problem with that. What I don't want to have is sort of saying that it has to be resolved. My sense is that this easement issue may not get resolved between. They have to require something outside of these two folks. And I don't want to preclude. That is, I don't have a sense. I don't understand well enough for Mr. Personally, requires somebody to take something to court, and that's a timetable of control. I hope that doesn't happen. But that might have to happen. And so to me, we're now empowering one of the parties. Cautious.
Can you explain a little bit to me further as to how we're empowering one of the parties would have the decision-making ability with regard to that?
Well, because in 2000 or 19, not the site approved council, it included saying that he would have to agree to the property to use that property.
That's what I heard as described by Claytonville earlier today. I think that is inferred, but that is not what that easement was described as. Access to Merle Hay Road is what was approved.
Well, access to all right.
Okay. That's where I'm getting into how are we empowering one versus the other is the question I guess I don't understand.
Well, whenever you sort of say until argument come to the table. I just want to be very careful that we don't tip that. It is conditioned at the site, it is a condition of the site plan that they work this out. That is absolutely a condition. Mr. Sisson cannot get a building permit until that is resolved, right? But that gives him time, right? He doesn't need a building permit tomorrow or I don't know when I don't know when the building permit can apply for the building permit. I'm a lobbyist. I don't know this stuff. But that comes further down the road, right? And that gives him time to work this out with Mr. Cooley, right? So to me, that's why I'm very hesitant to say we're gonna give a rating permit grounds.
But how is that different when we withhold put a condition on for the building permit? Why are you not using the same argument of we're empowering one versus the other in a great permit? I mean, they ultimately can't get to their development in building that building until they have the agreement.
But if they're not seeking the building permit until, let's say, that's a window of time that they can start on the site, they can work on the site, and figure out either they come to a consensus or they figure out a route to.
permit. The grading permit, I presume, to apply for the grading permit pretty quick. And if you can't apply for the grading permit until I think that tilts it too much.
Still have a site plan. Is it not to still a question?
But first of all, I think that you can start the grading on the part that's not in question, right? You can at least start grading the north part of the site and not deal with that south part until that issue is resolved. Councilmember Cope, when you say the north side, I'm sorry to interject. One site, sure, right. And all the different, and again, look, I'm outside of my knowledge on this. So, but I just think we just have to be careful that we don't, to me, I think the building permit, both sides an opportunity to come to a resolution to tip the balance. Well, Mr. Coles would realize that developer the grading permit now. So that shifts the balance of power. I think that's really careful. Since we're before us in March, would you have that same sentiment? In other words, we'd have a much longer runway before grading. No, not have a longer runway before grading. If the person in front of us in March, they would want to start grading in March, right? So the council. That's March or October. Then I don't understand why the building permit is different. The argument is driving. Perhaps the legal counsel needs to weigh in as to the argument of the power in one party, because I don't understand that aspect. So is there anything I need to be aware of from a city perspective where we would be, in essence, putting an advantage of one party over another?
Council has the ability of the site plan approval. So access point is a concern, and what building permit or the grading permit on that item, have the authority. One developer than the other.
And from a permitting perspective, grading permit is typically administrative, and where it ties in on site plan approval is specific to tree removal. That's what triggered, they would have to have approval of the site plan for tree removal. But we could issue a grading permit without tree removal. I don't know why someone would do that, because can't really much to say otherwise. Building permit, kind of in that same vein, per code, you can't issue a building permit for a commercial property prior to site plan approval. So typically when we structure resolutions, we have it amend site plan prior to issuance of a building permit. That's kind of been, at least since I've been here, pretty much standard operating procedure. As Christy, advised, certainly you have the ability to make it prior to issuance of a grading permit. Which one's better? I don't know. But that's kind of the underlying permitting process. Hopefully that helps.
It does, and I guess I just want to make sure I get a pulse, so to speak, of the council from that perspective, because if no one else has the appetite for changing that condition, by all means, let's follow our more status quo of keeping on the building permit. They clearly still have to provide as part of their site plan, their grading plan for protection of those trees. Back to that.
Are we comfortable staying with our typical practice on this? And that is sticking with the building permit. Three shaking heads.
All right, we have a third, okay. So I will make a motion to approve resolution number 23-275. Directing staff, and I may point this turn it over if possible. Basically directing staff to amend the site plan based on the October 10th revised site plan that was submitted by the developer. And adding a condition that would say, whatever that condition that.
The way I have it written here, as I was doing myself here, necessary site, the site plan preliminary plat shall be amended and the following items shall be completed prior to issuance of a building permit. And this would be the new condition, necessary site adjustments to allow for the alternative site plan submitted on October 10th, 2023, in such manner that all zoning and subdivision regulations are met.
Question. Does this not include the extra space for the bur oak tree?
One other item that I want you to clean up from the resolution, but
Let me just finish though. I guess what from the way I developers clearly heard that that's a problem. And I would say that I would convey too, the developer is able to modify the site plan in a way to expand around that borough. I would strongly urge them. But I'm not going to add that. Sorry, Clay.
oh no, that's fine. I just wanted to point out, as drafted, condition 7D, address the 24-inch Ginka, that would just be stricken with the alternative, because that would be approved.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Second, further discussion. Not?
Martin,
No.
Burkhart,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Ready,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Motion passed. On to item 7B. Consider approval of resolution number 22-221. Pioneer Parkway turn lane improvement construction plans. Great.
For that, would be a motion to table for further consideration.
So moved.
Second.
Motion, second discussion. Sambo, please.
Burkhart,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Ready,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Yeah.
For the record, I would just invite people listening to the recording to refer back to item 7A, where we had significant discussion on this project. I don't know if I have anything additional to add, but if you have any questions, or I can go into detail.
Council have questions?
I see in this, plan, they have now recognized the 5 crabapple trees and that 3 of them would have to be removed in this diagram. What are we requiring, replacement of those trees anywhere?
That is, as presented in front of you, that is not a requirement.
I would like to propose that, there 3 additional trees go into this berm area, or if they're not, if we can't put those in because it creates an obstruction for viewing, I'd like to see 3 trees given to the Parks Department. Two-inch caliber.
I think that should be split between.
Any more discussion on that? Applicant want to comment on that? Other questions for Clayton?
So moved.
Second?
Motion second, further discussion? Sam, vote please.
Cope,
Yes.
Ready, Evans, Martin,
Yes.
Burkhart.
Yes.
Motion passed. Item 7C, consider resolution 23-283. Authorizing execution of an amendment number 4 to the agreement for private development by and between the City of Johnston and Ignite Johnston LLC.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is an amendment that updates the development agreement deadlines to account for additional time that they're requesting changes with their architectural updates and other site plan adjustments. Under this proposed amendment number 4, the project is required to commence their construction by January 31st of 2024, with substantial completion now required by June 30th, 2025. Implementation of minimum assessed value delayed to January 1st of 2026, and then their employment requirements will also begin to January 1st of 2026. All economic development grants and current amendments will remain unchanged with this amendment. The developers also agree that they'll provide with their general contractor updates to economic development ad hoc committee on a bi-monthly basis. An update in October to the committee. And so this requirement of the development agreement will begin on December of 2023. I would note that there will be additional amendments to development agreement required really as part of the project rally. That is being addressed with this. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Council, any questions for Mike? Not, do we have a motion to approve resolution 23-283?
Second.
Have a motion and a second discussion. Sam, vote please.
Ready, Evans,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Burkhart,
Yes.
Cope.
Yes.
Motion passed. Item 7D, consider resolution number 23-282, approving and authorizing execution of amendment number 3, purchase, sale, and development agreement by and between the City of Johnston and Johnston Golf Development LLC.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This amendment updates the development agreement deadlines to account for additional time requested to complete some of the pre-development work on the site. Under the proposed amendment number 3, completion for most of the pre-construction site improvements has been moved to 2023 with a few exceptions. 2023 exceptions. There are several reasons for the delay. One of them, the challenge regarding encountering Indiana bat habitat on the site. Now, in recognition also to the developer's progress in pre-construction site improvements, the amendment also replaces the current repurchase remedy with an enhanced purchase price payment in the amount of $2,407,500. Now, this payment only due to the city developer fails to meet obligations. Specifically, those of degree or requirements are to complete the pre-construction site improvements by November 30th. Provide proof of financing the project of 2024 and material progress on the golf facility by June 17th, 2024. Additionally, as part of this agreement, we'll have to execute a mortgage to secure the enhanced purchase price payment. With that, staff is recommending approval, and I have to answer any questions the council has. Thank you.
Council, any questions for Mike? None, do we have a motion to approve resolution 23-282?
Second.
Motion, second discussion. Sam, vote please.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Burkhart,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Ready.
Motion passed. Waited all night for that. Item 70, consider approval of claims in the amount of $2,344,444.51.
Move approval.
Motion and a second discussion. Sam, vote please.
Martin,
Yes.
Burkhart,
Yes.
Coe,
Yes.
Ready, Evans.
Motion passed. Moving on to city administrator comments.
I have no comments this evening. Thank you.
Any council comments, Councilman Evans.
Nice to see the sidewalk on World, eh? Job, thanks.
Councilman Ready.
Last, thank you.
Councilman Cole.
I want to salute Dave Wilberding from the Ward One, the real leader across the state with planners. And I had the opportunity of the same board, and watching the group, I did a lot of the training. Highly thought of, and Clayton also very nice. Not only helping work with planners across the state. So second of all, if they have an hour or an hour and a half, I would strongly urge take time to watch the live stream from Friday night's football game. A couple different reasons. One, it was senior night. So it's senior night for the band, the football players, the cheerleaders. It was, and so, and Jeff Loren, a lot of people probably know Jeff. Jeff is the key announcer for almost every school athletic event. It's very active. Jeff did an amazing job. And everybody who goes to the line, they talk about what are they going to do next, right? And it's really it's fascinating. And I think the number of band members who plan to be going to some sort of field of engineering is like 100. I mean, I'm over exaggerating, but they are. We have the best marching band in the state of Iowa. We also have the smartest marching band in the state. Yeah, it's incredible. But really, it's a cool thing. And then at halftime, go all the way to halftime. Peter's Jay, as anybody involved with the school knows, Jay is heavily involved with the marching band. And so Jay is planning to move to Texas. We look at his daughter moved down to Texas. So they recognized him and Jeff for a pretty lengthy, Jay, so lengthy in fact that the band performance afterwards went well into what was supposed to start the second half, but talked a lot about Jay's activity in the community and work on the planning and zoning. So that was really cool. And then obviously Johnston won some town called Urbandale. So anyway, but if you have some time, I would highly recommend watch it. It will certainly enhance your already positive feelings about I'll try to be brief. The first of which is we're coming to the point in fall seasons of sports and everything else within our school district where everyone's medal gets tested. I pray and hope that they continue their absolute best on the field and off the field, including staying injury free, whether that's running or playing or spiking or just generally studying that capacity. I had the opportunity this last week, and I know the mayor had it just a couple weeks before, to go and visit with some very wonderfully unique, but also determined students at Johnston High School as part of the IJAG program. And they ask wonderful questions. They certainly want to know how they can contribute to our community. It's part of their curriculum to do so, but also I think they sincerely want to do so. And so it was a unique and great experience for me to be able to see a whole bunch of different folks that I typically interact with in activities of my kids, but also from the standpoint of folks who certainly have a care and interest in our community too. So if you ever get a chance to interact either with the IJAGs group, support them through tours or other visits or things like that, by all means, take advantage of it. You will not disappoint. Just another outstanding way that our schools are shaping young minds for a positive future.
Councilwoman Martin.
I'll pass.
The only thing that I will put on tonight is the council's office, the coastal council's office today. such an honor. To have you. For those representing the different cities. Interact. It's gonna be a nice event. So, just wanted to report on that. Anything else?
Madam Mayor, failed earlier to introduce Josh Lair,
Oh,
our new
Go ahead,
economic
Josh.
development director. Today is his official first day. Nice short day for him.
seldom get out of here by 7:30. But we usually don't go till 10, so it's almost like a meeting for you, Josh. Welcome. Anything else to come before the council this evening? Not, we are adjourned.